Maybe my kids have picked up on it because my daughter got me this mug for my birthday that says "Adulting is hard." So maybe they are, more equipped to deal with this than the adults are. But
I love it.
yeah. But I've done that worry and what if thing with a million different topics. I can, I didn't know it at the time, but going back to, when I was, I don't know, maybe in high school and, overanalyzing and perfectionisting, my baseball pursuits as a student athlete, some of those types of things. Or more recently, I would get myself in, just to give a real world example that maybe people can identify with, watching the news. It's dangerous. First of all, there's more stimuli now than there's ever been before. I mean, you get push notifications on your phone. There's 100 different social media apps that you can go to for news and everything. And, of course, fear seems to sell clicks. So all the headlines are rather worrisome, it seems. And that's not helpful. But I know, I guess I've done a better job of this maybe since like May, but I would say earlier on in the pandemic, I would get myself kind of frozen, going through over and over in my head, like, okay, this started here, so it's going to get better here, and maybe it'll end here. And, like trying to play through the scenarios and flush them out and just get a grasp on those worrisome thoughts. We, as humans, we like control, and it's something we don't have control over. So that was one example of a scenario where I've done that, but there have been many, and there were a couple therapy sessions with Katie where we were talking through, the ramifications for me personally of the pandemic situation, and but then also identifying silver linings and things will get better eventually, and some more positive ways of looking at things. But that, those things can happen in many walks of life. It has happened to me socially. It has happened professionally in various aspects. It happened to me with my personal interpretation of COVID and how it was affecting my life. And I'm willing to bet there's millions of others this year in particular, Mike, that have felt the same way, at least about that situation.
Yeah, I agree. Earlier we had discussed, I think in a previous episode, just kind of where things are right now with the current situation with the pandemic, with both anxiety and depression being at unbelievable high levels right now. I think we had talked about 1 in 2 Americans experiencing some type of either anxiety or depression right now, and normally it's either 1 in 4 or 1 in 5. You have different statistics there, but typically you see it, and even that to me is higher than we would ever want it. But right now anxiety is kind of running 3 times higher right now at this time of the year than it was a year ago, and so a lot of people can relate to, I think, what you're saying, and even your example of just kind of even media and we're so flooded with information right now, easily accessible, that it's sometimes challenging to find that balance to limit your exposure to that, because it can absolutely kind of pull you in. It's almost like this kind of vortex, takes you right in, and before you know it, you're kind of in this kind of whirlwind. It's like the whirlpool or the Hoover wind tunnel, the vacuum cleaner. You're just kind of in there, and you're just trying to, I need to get out of that. How do I get out of that? Someone stop, pull the plug to something. I need to get out of this whirlwind. And it's the work is trying to find ways to do that, and you can. And some of that, even some of these basic things about just limiting your exposure to that can be helpful, because as soon as you get in there, sometimes it's hard to get back out. You start, I'll look for a little bit. I'll just scroll for I have a couple minutes, and next thing you know, a couple minutes turns into an hour, and you're still kind of on a news feed, or you're pulled into stories, and it can happen to any one of us. It can happen to any one of us, even when we don't intend for it to happen. People, I just want to stay informed, but sometimes we get pulled into there, and then we're off to the races. The what if whirlwind happens, and can happen to all of us. And I love your mug, by the way. Adulting is hard, because it is absolutely hard. I could very well have a mug myself that says that. But yeah, and you mentioned something about kids, and kids, they have this way of just kind of seeing the world, which sometimes I think is something we all just need to kind of wrap our arms around sometimes and embrace. But I remember this one person I was working with. He was pretty young at the time. He was a kid at the time. And he used to describe his anxiety as nipping thoughts. I had these nipping thoughts. And I never forgot that. That's probably 10 plus years ago now. And so his work was to try to see what he could do to make sure that the nipping thoughts didn't get the better of his day, the better of him. And so that's what his work was kind of set out to do. These nipping thoughts were these kind of what ifs, and he'd get into the whirlwind. But I never forgot that. I loved his kind of nipping thought kind of image that he held on to. And he was able to then work to becoming more the master of the nipping thoughts, as opposed to the nipping thoughts being the master of him. So I think all of us can take a page on that, because there are days where the nipping thoughts may get the better of us. And to realize this, that's going to happen. And that is not a sign of anything other than just being human in sometimes really stressful times and situations. But there are certain things that we can do to really kind of stop, or put some stops in place of those nipping thoughts, or the what ifs, and some of those false alarms of anxiety.